This is a call, folks. The Democratic Party needs a wake-up call. I see law firms bending a knee to this president, not caring about the larger principles, that those free speech rights, that you could take on any client, why are you bending the knee? I see universities that should be bastions of free speech bending at the knee to this president. I see businesses taking late-night talk show hosts off the air because they dare to insult a president. I see people who want mergers suddenly think that they have to pay tribute to this president. And what are the very people here elected to defend the Constitution of the United States saying, oh, well, today, let's look the other way and pass some resources that won't go to Connecticut, that won't go to Illinois, that won't go to New York, that will go to the states he likes. That is complicity with an authoritarian leader who is trashing our Constitution. It's time for Democrats to have a backbone. It's time for us to fight. It's time for us to draw lines. And when it comes to the safety of my state being denied these grants, that's why I'm standing here. Don't question my integrity. Don't question my motives. I'm standing for Jersey. I am standing for my police officers. I'm standing for the Constitution, and I'm standing for what's right. And dear God, if you want to come at me that way, you're going to have to take it up with me, because there's too much on the line right now in America. As people's due process rights and freedom of the speech rights and secret police are running around this country, picking people up off the streets who have a legal right to be here. There's too much going on in this country. When are we going to stand together for principles that I just heard that we're agreed with? When are we going to stand together? If we don't stand as Democrats, we deserve to lose. But if we stand united, if we stand strong, if we stand with other people, if we tell with a chorus of conviction in America what this president is doing is wrong, if we stand up and speak that way, dear God, we will win. Like all of those people at our ancestors who joined hands together and said, we shall overcome. No, not on my watch. I'm protecting Jersey today. I'm protecting our Constitution today. I'm standing today.
I rise today seeking unanimous consent to pass a package of bipartisan bills that will support current and former law enforcement officers who have sacrificed so much, sometimes everything, to protect our families. Yesterday morning, 3 people died in a shooting in my home state in Reno, Nevada. And just hours later, 4 people died, including a law enforcement officer, in a shooting in New York City. The only reason more people didn't die is because law enforcement responded quickly. Law enforcement officers run towards danger for the rest of us. These are the people we're supporting with the package of bills today. This package includes 3 pieces of legislation that I am proud to co-sponsor, and one I introduced myself. I am a co-sponsor of S-419, the Reauthorizing Support and Treatment of Officers in Crisis Act, introduced by Senator Hawley. This bipartisan bill would help fund family support, suicide prevention, and other mental health services to law enforcement officers. I'm also a co-sponsor of S-1316, the Strong Communities Act, introduced by Senator Peters. This is bipartisan legislation that would make law enforcement recruits eligible for funding to make their education and training programs more affordable in return for their commitment to service to our communities. And finally, I'm co-sponsoring S-539, the bipartisan Protect Our Children Reauthorization Act, introduced by Senator Cornyn. This bill authorizes funding for the Department of Justice to assist federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies in investigating and prosecuting child exploitation. These bills, along with 4 others, including my colleague Senator Klobuchar, these bills honor our law enforcement officers and have support from both Republicans and Democrats.
Thank you very much. I'm reserving the right to object. I want to begin by acknowledging the tragic loss of a New York City police officer, Dar al-Islam, last night, just about 15 miles from where I live. He made the ultimate sacrifice, bravely placing himself in harm's way to protect strangers people he didn't know, because that's what American police officers do. This selfless commitment is a daily reminder. It's a reminder of the reality for police officers in America who risk their lives to safeguard communities. My deepest condolences go out to his family and his young children during this time of unimaginable grief. I rise today to propose an amendment to the bills before us, one that guarantees every officer in every state, like Officer Islam, has the full support they deserve in their service to our communities from this body. Sadly, this is not what the Justice Department is doing. Rather than supporting law enforcement agencies and officers equally across the nation, they are weaponizing public safety grants to punish state and local jurisdictions that resist the Trump policy agenda, including my home state of New Jersey. The Department of Justice is right now withholding funds from law enforcement agencies across the country, including New Jersey, that we have passed through this body in a bipartisan way unless they enforce the administration's unjust immigration agenda and comply with the president's unjust and unlawful executive orders and memoranda. It is disgraceful. It is unfair. It is unjust. And it is dangerously reckless towards the officers whose well-being they are jeopardizing. Officers like the ones I know personally who serve and protect New Jersey. Come on now. Federal funds should not be used for partisan political games. They shouldn't be weaponized to benefit this state that supported the president and this state that didn't support the president. This is the shift towards authoritarianism. It is undermining the separation of powers we have here in America. This body has duly approved grants. It is our job, it is spelled out in the Constitution, that each of us has sworn an oath to protect. And this president is upending that process, violating the will of this body, Democrats and Republicans alike, in pursuit of his petty political agenda. And who is getting hurt? Well, in this case, New Jersey police officers are being hurt. New York police officers are getting hurt in the wake of a murder of a police officer in New York yesterday. This is outrageous. Public safety grants like these that I am a co-sponsor of are not meant to reward law enforcement in favored jurisdictions or state while punishing others. It shouldn't matter whether a person puts on his uniform in Texas or New Jersey. Does it matter that Officer Islam, who was killed last night in New York City, does it matter that he's a New York cop and not a North Dakota cop? Sadly, it appears that Donald Trump thinks so. And for us as a body to move forward right now is being complicit in what Donald Trump is doing. I say no. I say we stand. I say we fight. I say we reject this, and in a bipartisan way that we demand an end to this kind of constitutionally unjust carving up of the resources we approve. Think about this. In April, Donald Trump's administration cut nearly 400 public safety grants administered by its Office of Justice Programs without any notice or explanation. Think about that for a second. Programs that I supported, programs that I co-sponsored, programs that protect police officers and communities, he canceled without a justification. I have written letters to the Justice Department. They have not given a justification. I've asked in open hearings, why did you cut this funding for approved grants to states like New Jersey? No justification. I sent a letter to the DOJ signed by 30 of my colleagues demanding information about what happened and that they reinstate all grants that had been rescinded, and no action and no response. And yet today we want to move forward with needed grant programs to protect police officers, but that money won't go to New York. That money won't go to New Jersey. You gotta be kidding me. When will we stand and fight this president? This offers little consolation. Today, nobody is speaking to the organizations in New Jersey, to the police officers in New Jersey that partner with law enforcement but now lack the resources to endure a burdensome appeal to operate without critical grants or fundings now for months. When are we going to stand up as a body and defend our work, defend our jurisdiction, defend this co-equal branch of government? I ask my colleagues to pass these bills with my amendment, to provide resources to law enforcement agencies with this important provision that safeguards these grants from politicization and ensures that all law enforcement agencies have their fair chance to secure these important grants. Our officers have the hardest job in America. Every day they put their lives on the line. Why would we do something today that's playing into the president's politics and is going to hurt the officers in states like mine? I believe in these bills. I'm a co-sponsor on some. And that's why I'm standing here to fight to ensure police departments in New Jersey aren't excluded from accessing these vital funds. Our officers have just as much of a right as officers in other states. So do officers in California, in New York, in Illinois, in Washington, and other states that have been the target of this Department of Justice. I am an American. I pledge allegiance to that flag, liberty and justice for all. Pass my amendment and make sure that all officers in America who put their lives on the line have access to these grants. I ask the consent be modified, the bill be modified, that my amendments to S-180, S-419, S-539, S-1316, and S-1563, which are at the desk, also be agreed to. And the bills as amended, if amended, be considered read a third time and passed in block so that all police officers in America can get the intended resources that the Judiciary Committee passed unanimously for American police.
Is there an objection to the modification?
Mr. President.
The senator from Nevada.
Reserving the right to object. I agree. Withholding funding for law enforcement anywhere in the country, across the country, is just not acceptable, and it should not be done. And it should not be based on party affiliation, playing favoritism. I absolutely agree. But I also agree that two wrongs don't make a right. And where we are today, these bills passed unanimously out of the Judiciary Committee weeks ago. And my colleague from New Jersey, I have respect for him. He's on the committee. He voted to pass these bills. He had an opportunity at that time to present this amendment. This is the first time we're ever hearing about it. We've been trying to pass these package of bills that passed out of committee unanimously for the last 8 weeks. And now that we came to the floor to try to push and get this done, we are hearing for the first time about this amendment. Now, let me just say, this amendment really is not even applicable to the bill that the profit bill that is part of this. This has nothing to do with grant funding. His bill has everything to do with trying to make sure that grant funding goes to all the states. My bill doesn't even talk about grant funding. There's no funding associated with it. But yet he wants to put it on my piece of legislation. This is why this is ridiculous. This is an attempt to kill all of these bills. I don't know why. I don't know why. Because at the end of the day, all of these bills are about bipartisan support. And if my colleague absolutely has concerns about getting funding to his law enforcement, I'd be willing to work with him. I would be willing to work, and I know my colleagues would, to figure out how we ensure that this administration doesn't play favorites and is fighting for that funding and holding them accountable to get that funding to all of our law enforcement communities across this country. I agree, President Trump's impoundment of funding, it is a serious concern. But tacking on a poison pill language to these bills won't guarantee any additional funding makes it to New Jersey, Nevada, or any other state. Instead, what it will do, it will keep critical bills from passing in the first place. Now, let me just say that again. These are critical bills. One bill, the Protecting First Responders for Secondary Exposure Act, it requires purchasing devices that prevent secondary exposure to fentanyl and other lethal substances. Reauthorizing Support and Treatment for Officers in Crisis Act of 2025. It provides family support and mental health services to law enforcement personnel. Protect Our Children Reauthorization Act of 2025. It assists federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies in investigating and prosecuting child exploitation. And we are sitting here today saying that is not going to pass, even though it came out of committee unanimously. Even though there was a time to address the concerns that my colleague has, and now he wants to kill all of these bills. Some of them that his amendment is not even applicable to. So you've got to question what is going on here. Is this the right venue to fight for what he is seeking? And I absolutely respect him and understand his concern, and be willing to fight with him to get that funding, essential funding, into a state that this administration apparently is blocking. But this is not the way to go about it, to kill all of these bills with this poison pill amendment. And for that reason, Mr. President, I object.
Reserving the right to object.
Is there an objection to the original request?
Reserving the right to object.
The senator from New Jersey.
I'm confused by my colleague because she knows I don't object to her two bills. She's going to be coming here to offer her two bills in a second, so I don't know what the confusion is there. I object to the bills that are putting resources out that states from California to New York are not eligible for because of the actions of this president. The second thing my colleague confuses me is saying I had my chance. Well, actually, I didn't. The regularly scheduled Judiciary Committee hearing wrapped up, and then a hastily one was put back together. I had no notice of that, no ability to plan for it, and had a conflict. This, to me, is the problem with Democrats in America right now, is we're willing to be complicit to Donald Trump to let this pass through when we have all the leverage right now there is to say, if you're as passionate about police as we are, then pass bills out of this body that will help the police officers in Washington, that will help the police officers in Illinois, that will help the police officers in New Jersey, that will help the police officers in New York. Don't be complicit to the President of the United States, who we both know doesn't understand that language. Oh, please, don't hurt blue states. We are standing at a moment where our president is eviscerating the Constitution of the United States of America, and we're willing to go along with that today. No, not on my watch. I stand against this. It is a violation of our Constitution for the President of the United States to ignore the will of Congress and decide which states are eligible to grants and which are not. Well, we know something in New York and New Jersey. I was a Newark elected official when 9/11 happened. I saw my first responders charging into those buildings. I know what police officers do every day. My amendment was just called the poison pill. That's ridiculous. What my amendment does, it says the police officers in New Jersey are just as important as the police officers in North or South Dakota. It says the police officers in New York are just as important as the police officers in Texas. It says the police officers in California are just as important as the police officers in Alabama. Why would we go along with a president who is violating our Constitution time and time again? When in the history of this body, Democrats and Republicans used to stand up for their turf? These could easily pass. Put a simple amendment that says, you know what, you can play games however you want, President Trump, but when it comes to resources for police officers, no games. Today, I stand and fight for the Constitution. I stand and fight against this president, and heck yeah, I'm going to stand and fight for the police officers from the great state of New Jersey. I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President.
The senator from Minnesota.
Mr. President, I want to thank the senator from Nevada for her work in trying to bring these bills to a vote on the floor. I want to thank Senator Grassley, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I want to thank Senator Durbin, who is there, the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, someone who has, by the way, been a leading voice on immigration for years in this chamber. And one of the things I don't understand here is that we have committees for a reason, and we have hearings for a reason. And you can't do one thing on Police Week and not show up and not object and let these bills go through and then say another a few weeks later in a big speech on the floor. So I like to show up at the markups, and I like to make my case. And I will note that Senator Booker objected to my police reauthorization bill, the COPS funding, the Clinton COPS funding, long before Donald Trump came into office. So this is not just about this. This is a long dispute over this type of funding. Funding that I think is really important right now. Our country's law enforcement professionals do some of the hardest and most important work out there. Every day across America, we ask them to put everything on the line to keep us safe. We ask them to run towards danger and to guide others to safety. And every day across America, they put on their uniforms, their bulletproof vests, their badges, and they get to work. We need to have their backs, and that's what this package of bills does. By the way, bills supported out of the committee from some of the most liberal senators and some of the most conservative senators in this body. We came together. There were bills we would have liked to include that we did not. And if the objection is based on some of this horror show that's going on out of the White House, I agree with that piece of Senator Booker's points. And I have been equally vociferous in taking on this administration. But all of these bills came out of the committee unanimously, and I think they deserve that support on the floor. These bills help fund grants for mental health services for law enforcement. And by the way, if this issue, which I agree with Senator Booker on, about that all these states should be treated the same, well, then I suppose then he will be voting against all of this funding for New Jersey unless this is changed. So we should be watching for that for every single vote instead of just these bills that are in front of us that were supported unanimously out of committee. Grants that help law enforcement combat child sexual exploitation. Grants to help address the recruitment and retention crisis that is plaguing local law enforcement. Senator Cortez Masto's bill, as she explained, would help support the families of fallen law enforcement officers who were targeted and attacked because of their service as law enforcement. My bill, which has been now objected to, so I'm not going to mention it separately or ask for it to be called up separately. My bill, the Retired Law Enforcement Officers Continuing Service Act, done with Senator Grassley, would make sure that law enforcement agencies can continue to utilize the skills that talented law enforcement retirees have built up over their career of public service. There are many retired law enforcement officers who want an active retirement and are eager and ready to serve their community. This might sound like small ball, but when we are looking at how we're going to build up these police agencies, when we don't have enough police, when they're out there at these scenes getting shot at, we've got to be creative in terms of the ideas. And I believe strongly we're going to see another president in the future. We're going to see out of these next elections a check on some of this. But for now, I want to get these programs started. This bill would allow law enforcement agencies across the country to keep using their expertise to review video footage, to solve carjacking cases, or help cyber and financial crime investigations. This bill will also help train the next generation of law enforcement officers. These and the other police bills passed during Police Week, while those police officers are sitting there in the hearing room when no one objected, they are bipartisan, common sense legislation. They passed the Judiciary Committee unanimously. And I can't help it if someone couldn't change their schedule to be there. I think that these hearings should mean something, and that people should be saying the same thing they say on Police Week when those people are sitting out there in the uniforms who have lost loved ones, as they say on this Senate floor. If we expect law enforcement to respond to some of the most difficult crises at a moment's notice, it's on us to set them up for success. I was there at the National Mall where it rained the entire night, and not a family wasn't there when they thought it was going to be a nicer day. And that was this year on the National Mall to honor those fallen heroes, the Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Candlelight Vigil. Every single officer whose name was read that night was a beloved family member and a friend to so many, including 3 from my state. There was Officer Jamal Mitchell, who was shot and killed in the line of duty just last June, and Officers Paul Elmstead and Matthew Ruge, who along with firefighter paramedic Adam Finseth were killed responding to a domestic violence call in Burnsville, Minnesota. They were called to duty. They answered the call. They actually got 7 kids out of this house and saved their lives. And then one was gunned down. The paramedic came in to try to save him. He was gunned down. And I will never forget hearing from Burnsville Police Sergeant Adam Medlicott, who was there with the 3 fallen first responders when they answered the call. He said of his fallen comrades, "We were there for 7 children. Nothing could be more honorable." He is absolutely right. You can't teach that kind of heroism. Our brave law enforcement professionals deserve to know that the resources they rely on will be there when they need them. And I hope we can work some of this out. I completely agree with Senator Booker about what this administration is doing. But you can't just pick out a few bills that came out of a committee and say, I'm going to stop those, and then allow for other bills that fund other parts of your budget in your state. Thank you.
Senator from New Jersey.
I was just called out by name, and I want to respond. This is what frustrates me. I've passed numerous pieces of legislation for our police officers. I partnered with Chuck Grassley, the incredible senator from Iowa, on a bill very similar to the one I support about police officers who fall in the line of duty. In this case, it was COVID. Police officers who got COVID and died had difficulty proving it was a line of duty death. We passed the legislation to make sure those families get the benefits. I've worked in bipartisan ways and within my own party to make sure we get resources to our police officers. I don't need lectures about the urgency of this. One of my childhood best friends, a police officer in a small town in New Jersey, after a hard day's work, before he even went home to see his family, died by suicide. I don't need somebody implying in any way that this is not vital to me and my state, that we have resources for our police officers. That's why I support this package. That's why I'm a co-sponsor of some of the bills in this package. But what I am tired of is when the President of the United States of America violates the Constitution, trashes our norms and traditions. And what does the Democratic Party do? Comply? Allow him? Beg for scraps? No, I demand justice. Somebody's implying that this to me is not about resources for my state. I will fight for Jersey every day, every night. And when it comes to the police officers of my state, anybody who implies that something is going on other than my allegiance and fealty to the safety, strength, and protection of my police officers, because they protect me and everybody in this body. This is a call, folks. The Democratic Party needs a wake-up call. I see law firms bending a knee to this president, not caring about the larger principles, that those free speech rights, that you could take on any client, why are you bending the knee? I see universities that should be bastions of free speech bending at the knee to this president. I see businesses taking late-night talk show hosts off the air because they dare to insult a president. I see people who want mergers suddenly think that they have to pay tribute to this president. And what are the very people here elected to defend the Constitution of the United States saying, oh, well, today, let's look the other way and pass some resources that won't go to Connecticut, that won't go to Illinois, that won't go to New York, that will go to the states he likes? That is complicity with an authoritarian leader who is trashing our Constitution. It's time for Democrats to have a backbone. It's time for us to fight. It's time for us to draw lines. And when it comes to the safety of my state being denied these grants, that's why I'm standing here. Don't question my integrity. Don't question my motives. I'm standing for Jersey. I am standing for my police officers. I'm standing for the Constitution, and I'm standing for what's right. And dear God, if you want to come at me that way, you're going to have to take it up with me, because there's too much on the line right now in America. As people's due process rights and freedom of the speech rights and secret police are running around this country, picking people up off the streets who have a legal right to be here, there's too much going on in this country. When are we going to stand together for principles that I just heard that we're agreed with? When are we going to stand together? If we don't stand as Democrats, we deserve to lose. But if we stand united, if we stand strong, if we stand with other people, if we tell with a chorus of conviction in America what this president is doing is wrong, if we stand up and speak that way, dear God, we will win. Like all of those people at our ancestors who joined hands together and said, we shall overcome. No, not on my watch. I'm protecting Jersey today. I'm protecting our Constitution today. I'm standing today.